I saw a movie, Denise and I saw a movie recently called The 100-Foot Journey. It had to do with real appreciation for food and the refined palate. And there was a scene in the movie where this young Indian chef prepares food for this master chef, French cuisine chef, who has a very discriminating palate, and she doesn't really want to give him any credit because they're in competition, but she tastes this food that he makes for her, and she almost begins weeping because she says, there are so many nuances that have been extracted from this dish. There are so many flavor profiles that are coming through with every bite, that you've taken, something and you've made it all that it can possibly be. And I would say that to you as well, Gino. Yeah. So we want to live our lives in a way in which we can extract all of the richness and all of the subtle nuances that can make every bite of life something exquisite, yes? Isn't that why we're here? Isn't that why we come to places like this? Because we know that there can be something more to the experience of life than the mundane, than the ordinary, than the just another day getting through another day experience. We long for a experience of something that is more essentially who we are, yes? Because we tire of this feeling oftentimes of discontent, and we don't know how to name it, right? We don't know how to name it, but we know it's not us. And of course we have all of these little voices in our head that over our lifetime have been the source of input to us defining and identifying ourselves. And so this work in spiritual context is to listen to the one voice. Is to listen to the one voice, the one divine voice of truth that knows you as you truly are. And in order to do that, we have to work against the tide of the ordinary mind. Oh, good. We have to work with the surface awareness that would first jump up and tell us who we are. And it has such a loud and compelling and seemingly truthful voice. It would tell us who we are, and in fact, it tells us who we are not most of the time, like 99% of the time. Because it so often is rooted in avoiding pain. We are created in such a way that we are more likely to avoid pain in our life than we are to seek the positive, the good. And that comes from sort of this evolutionary notion that, when our world was a more dangerous place, although some people would say, and still live in dangerous situations, that you missing the danger signal would be much more costly to your evolution and your survival, for example, than not taking full note of that which is good and perfect and whole. So we sort of work against this old way, this old awareness that we have, which is we're tuning in all the time for what can harm us, and we have our heart defended sometimes. We have our awareness, sort of the radar of awareness is pointed more towards making sure we're okay, rather than the recognition that we already are, which is really dropping the defended heart. It's really dropping the defense mechanisms that would pretend to keep us safe when in fact they keep us from the very awareness of that which lets us know that we are already whole, we are already loved, and that we don't have to get anybody to love us or treat us in a particular fashion or way in order for ourselves to know that. Now, of course, that sounds like some high-minded thing you'd hear at a church on Sunday, which happens to be true at one level. But it's what every master teacher has taught, that which we are seeking, that the deeper experience of what we are seeking is already within us, and we have to find our way in and work against the tendency to think that we have to work it out here, right? And the great paradox of it is if we do begin to work it out inside, if we do begin to have that realization of self, that realization of love, then how we work out here is transformed as well. How people respond to us is transformed as well, right? Because if you begin to love yourself, how are your relationships going to be affected by that, right? But if you are constantly, requiring other people to love you in a particular way in order for you to feel loved, then you are in a very tenuous place, and no judgment around that. We all come by that, honestly. None of us had the perfect upbringing, no doubt. Joke that some people say is, Joseph and Mary were not your parents, you're probably not going to end up feeling Jesus' level of love, But I'm not even sure how much Joseph and Mary had to do with that. He did say, that these things that I have done, so shall you do, and even greater things. Because the kingdom is not contained in a book. This truth is, this way in is not obstructed by anything but us. Wow, such a liberating and terrible notion, isn't it? Like when people first come into unity, they have different experiences. First, they're really glad to find out that the kingdom of heaven is within, or the spirit of love, or whatever you call it, is within. Oh my God, it's so great, because I don't have to do all these gyrations in order to get that. And then the rest of the story comes in, and that you are the gatekeeper. You are the one who determines whether you experience that or not. So there's this accountability, there's this responsibility that goes with us, with that freedom, with that gift. And so what I want to share with you over the next 5 weeks is that we are going into this experience of the truth of our being. And it's called, in the book that we're going to be using, Living Originally. Living Originally. We're going to dig out the old divine blueprint on you and me. 10 spiritual practices to transform your life. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about transformation as one of our core values, and I told you it's my favorite topic. It's my favorite topic because transformation is very much like the difference between waxing your car and having an engine overhaul, for example. You can wax your car till it gleams, like the nighttime stars or whatever. But if your engine is puttering along, you're still not going to go any faster, and you may not even get where you're going. Transformation, on the other hand, has to do with let's not candy coat the reality that pretends to be the truth and try to make it more palatable. That's called translation versus transformation. And there is a time in our life when we do need translation. We had a memorial service yesterday, and part of that is to bring comfort to yourself just the way things are, just what you're dealing with at the moment. But there's a deeper message, and that is beyond just making the circumstances in my life more comfortable by compassion and love and acceptance. There is this element of saying, and even deeper than the comfort that I can get from these circumstances, is getting in touch with my true nature. That part of me which was never upset in the first place. That part of me that is love itself, that has this sense of peace that is beyond all human understanding. And that's what transformation is about. And transformation, the way we will talk about it here, is not a spiritual bypass, okay? You know what a spiritual bypass is? That when you just say, it's all good, and you try to hope that just that notion itself will avoid you having to do the work, which is the unlayering process, the getting rid of these stories. We still need to do the psychological work in order to get to the promised land. So it's not one or the other, it's both. But if our goal is transformation, then we keep that in the context of our conversation, which is what we'll be doing. Also, there was one more announcement here, and it came as as an insert for you. I'm sorry, I just noticed this just now. But Mark Welch is going to be here next Sunday, so parenthetically, I want to let you know. Mark is a wonderful musician. I'm sure he's been here before. And he was the music director in San Luis Obispo for many years, and we just enjoy his talent so much. He's going to be doing a workshop in the afternoon called Voice, a tool for personal transformation. So Mark does a lot of work with sound healing and sound, the effect of sound on opening yourself up. And so that's going to be happening next Sunday here from 1 to 3 o'clock. Okay. So this book, Living Originally, it's written by Robert Brummett. And Robert Brummett is an instructor at Unity Village. He was actually my instructor when I was in ministerial school, and Denise's as well. The book is not something that you have to have. We do have some copies in the bookstore, so feel free to pick up a copy if you'd like. We're going to take the 5 basic core practices that he describes in here. And the first one is radical self-awareness. Radical self-awareness. So we're, you know what radical means? Does anyone want to take a stab at what radical self-awareness might mean? What radical means? There's a hand in the back. Yes, yes. Say again?
The Latin word is root.
A land where it is rooted?
The Latin word is root.
Oh, root. Root. Thank you. Yes. Controversial? Could be in some sense, yes. And I'm sure we'll get there too. Out of the ordinary? Extreme? Yes? Paul? Say again? Intense. Yeah. Yeah, all of those are true, actually. I think that we sometimes think that we're aware, right? But radical self-awareness has this idea that I'm going to say what's going on in my mind. Obviously, this is what self-awareness is. What's going on in my mind, and then not just leave it at that. Like if you thought, oh, I'm thinking. Well, let's see. Let's use an example. For example, let's say that you're driving down the street, and suddenly your car sputters, and you got to pull over to the side of the road, and you're on your way to an appointment. And so, what are some of your thoughts? Okay, we know that there's a lot of those. Oh, shucks would be the first one that would come to my mind. 5-letter words are also a 6-letter word. I don't know. Yes, but so what would you be thinking? Going to be late. Yeah, what else? It's going to cost me a lot of money because the car repairs are, that's like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with my car, right? Yeah. And there could be a reason for it. Well, now you're going very deep very quickly. Which is great. So we come by this honestly. We're not trying to become enlightened overnight. We probably have given up on that, right? You went to that workshop, it didn't work. I went to it too. I went to a lot of those workshops. It did not happen. So what we're interested in is not perfection, but progress. We're here to do this work together, to take the arms of each other and wherever we are in consciousness and seek a higher consciousness, and to seek a higher understanding. So self-awareness begins with the idea, and radical self-awareness particularly, is asking a deeper question. So if your car breaks down and you think, this is going to cost me a lot of money, that might be a thought. But of course, there'd be a feeling under that too, right? Or maybe the feeling would come first and then the thought. And the feeling could be what? Fear? Fear. Sadness. Maybe frustration because you're just getting some money together and now boom, you got a car repair. You might be angry, right? You might be angry because that situation, maybe it was, you could blame it on somebody or something, the car maker or the last person who repaired your car or that significant other that was supposed to get that fixed or, blah, 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 blah. We can make up all kinds of stories. So all of that's going on. Now the purpose of awareness is not so that you can build up a great big case against other people and the world as you harvest all of these reasons for the way you're feeling. It is to become simply aware of them. Simply aware of them. Because so often what happens is there is no point of awareness between the fact, in other words, that which happens, and a reaction, which could be that fear or that anger or that frustration. So what we want to do is we want to put a pause as soon as we can into the understanding, even if we have to go back and do this work over again, which is often the case, we don't get it in the moment, we go back and say, okay, well, I was feeling angry and I was feeling fearful and I was feeling frustrated, and to understand, well, what's under that? Well, why are you frustrated? Well, I'm frustrated because I'm trying to save money and I can't do that. And maybe there's even a deeper self issue in there, like, it just seems like I can never get ahead. Some story, some belief that you have that sort of ends up sort of making you feel really bad because then you take it on. Now, what we're trying to do is to take the fact, the car breaks down or the car stops, and not have it automatically go into a story that defeats us. So that's what self-awareness can do for us. And as soon as we can put a pause, as soon as we can put a gap, you might say, between what happens and how we interpret what happens, then we make an opening for some other interpretation. And when we make a space for some other interpretation, some other meaning making, then we make space for the higher truth. So this isn't just about becoming more psychologically aware, like what a therapist might do with you, for example, who might say, well, tell me what you were feeling, tell me what you were thinking, and all of that just sort of comes so that you can become more self-aware, but we have an ulterior motive, folks. We want to become more aware so that we leave space in this interpretation of facts, so that in that space, something greater than the beliefs that we have held, that have held us back from knowing who we are, can enter into the picture. Does that make sense? So that's kind of it. Now I'm going to try to do something that even with heaven as behind me may falter, because technology is not always what it appears to be. Penny is going to turn on channel 1. Oh my gosh. Are you kidding? This is a first. Hallelujah. So what you have here in front of you, I'm so excited. This is great. I've been wanting to do this since I got here 10 months ago. Okay. So what you have here is this lovely little diagram. This is Charles Fillmore's notion of the 3 elements of mind. The conscious mind, which is, do you see that little thing? Oh. The conscious mind, which is that's the surface mind. That's the mind that contains all of our thoughts, our surface awareness, everything I was talking about. And then behind that is our subconscious mind, and that's often called the storehouse, which is, all of our memories are in there, and all those deep-seated beliefs are in there. And do not go by these portions or the relative, because really the subconscious is much larger than the conscious mind in terms of its capacity. The conscious mind is actually quite small, and that's why it really doesn't have much capacity to do what we want it to do. But behind the subconscious mind, sort of relatively speaking, is the superconscious, and that's what we would call our true nature, our Christ nature, our Buddha nature, our true self, whatever you want to call it. It's the divine aspect that you truly are, that I truly am. So what we're wanting to do here is when we have an experience of the external world out here, we use our senses that give us an impression into the conscious mind. Tells us, my car broke down, and I can see it and feel it, and I know all those things from my body. My body tells me that. And then the subconscious mind immediately is going to look for things that line up like that, right? Things that have happened in the past. Oh gosh, here goes again. We got those cars that are broken down in the past, and people who haven't fixed the cars, and they haven't fixed them right, and why does this always happen to me? Or, all those kind of wonderful thoughts that are not so wonderful. So here is where the work can be. Right here at the conscious level. When we become aware, we put that awareness in right here when we first begin having thoughts and feelings. We can't really do it at the sensory level. It's too late. We take in the image and our brain has a picture. But as soon as we make meaning from that, that's where we want to bring awareness. So it's really just becoming aware that we are having these feelings and naming them. This is what's called sometimes the witness self. Have you heard that expression? The witness self, it's the self that's right here. And it's watching you. Your car's breaking down and you're having this experience and you're doing this. And not only is it observing you in terms of what you're doing, pulling the car over to the side of the road and then having these, but it's also observing you having these thoughts and feelings. Now, that part of you does not have any judgments. It's simply like it would be like a reporter in their best behavior, where a reporter would just be calling it as it's happening. Your subconscious, on the other hand, was bringing all the meaning to it. It's kind of like if you're watching a sporting event, they have someone who's calling the play-by-play, and then they have the color person, the person who talks about what this could mean and gives the stats about this particular player, and maybe has some comments about that's the fourth time he's fumbled the ball, and I don't know what he's really going to make it on this team, and that's the fourth time my car's broke down, and I don't know if I'm going to make it. So we understand that there is the capacity to be witnessing what's happening in our life. Even that alone, even if you don't go any further than that this particular week, just to begin to think, what part of me right now is watching this show? What part of me is the reporter giving just an objective blow-by-blow, not only of what's happening out here, but what's happening inside of me? And as you realize that you have that capacity, then you now have put a gap between what's happening and the meaning that you make for it. Does that make sense? And that's really what we're after. This first phase of this living originally, we want to know that we have the capacity, because we all do. Because that part of us, that witness self, does not age. Could be called pure consciousness or conscious awareness. And all the teachers today talk about it, Eckhart Tolle and all these people, they talk about the witness self, the one that watches, the one that can be completely present with what's going on and give an unbiased accounting of what is happening. And that is the gap that we're looking for, because that keeps us from going into a meaning in which we were then stuck as a victim in life. Because if we go into the old story, in the subconscious mind, it's going to repeat after its kind. If we feel that, it's going to be one of those days, here it goes again. I think I'm done with that. Then we are going to probably reproduce that experience over and over again. And what we're wanting to do is live originally. And originally means that we want to get back to this higher self, this God is consciousness. And it's in that consciousness of the infinite, which is our goal for spiritual awakening, that those circumstances in life, we still see them. But because we have a feeling, we have a knowing that nobody and nothing can be against us, because we have that rooted in our being, then we don't see those things necessarily as evidence of somebody or something being against us. We just see them as blips on the screen of life, inconvenient and all those things, yes. But we have the capacity to hold them in a context in which we don't lose ourselves. We don't give our power over to those circumstances, because we know that there is only one presence and one power in our life. And it is immune from those vagaries, those vicissitudes of circumstances of life. Does that make any sense at all? That was my first attempt to explain this introduction to our 5-week series. And so if you take away from you today nothing more than the idea of being aware, being that one who watches as if you are an objective reporter, and just do it as often as you can. If you forget, you forget. Catch it the next time. You will have, even just doing that, you will experience things entirely differently. Just entirely differently.
Just switch over to the last phrase of the prayer for protection. All is well.
All is well.
All that's happening, no one is well.
All is well. Or even if you don't get to all is well, you might go, it is not what I think it is. It's more than what I think. It's more than what I feel. And that opens the lens. It's like if in photography, the longer you keep the lens open, the more light it lets in. But sometimes we just like to go And we snap and close, and that impression of, boy, oh boy, I know what this means. Keep the lens open, just a little bit longer, and a little bit longer, more light, more light, more light, more light. And in a new light, everything looks differently. Amen? Amen. Namaste. Thank you.